Thank you for your patience. As you will have seen and is still going on, the General Assembly is meeting on a special informal briefing to hear from the Secretary General, and they did hear from him this morning on his UN80 initiative. The Secretary General said, as we celebrate our 80th anniversary, the UN80 initiative is anchored in equipping our organization in a year of extraordinary uncertainty. He told the member states that the liquidity crisis we now face is not new, but today's financial and political situation adds even greater urgency to our efforts. We must rise to this moment. Mr. Guterres said that the UN80 initiative is structured around three key work streams: to rapidly identify efficiencies and improvements under current arrangements, to review the implementation of all mandates given to us by member states, and to consider the need for structural changes and program realignment within the UN system. He also noted that the Secretariat entities in New York and Geneva have been asked to review their functions to determine if any can be performed from existing lower-cost locations or may otherwise be reduced or abolished. Our mandates, he said, we have already completed an identification of all mandates reflected in the program budget and will soon do so for the rest of the system. The review has also so far identified over 3,600 individual mandates for the Secretariat alone. After this analytical work, relevant entities and departments will be invited to identify opportunities for improvements and for consolidation of efforts. Our structural reforms, he said, have already gotten the ball rolling by soliciting the views of a number of UN senior leaders. Their initial submissions, nearly 50 in all, show a high level of ambition and of creativity. The Secretary General added that we know that some of these changes will be painful to our UN family. Staff and their representatives are being consulted and they're being heard. Our concern is to be humane and professional in dealing with any aspect of the required restructuring. We just circulated his remarks, took a bit of time because he improvised some of them. A couple of announcements to share with you on travel. The Secretary General this afternoon will be traveling to Germany to attend the UN Peacekeeping Ministerial Summit that will kick off tomorrow. Tuesday in Berlin, he will also in Berlin be joined by the Undersecretary General for Peace Operations, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, the Undersecretary General for Department of Field Support, Operational Support, Atul Khare, and the Undersecretary General for Management, Catherine Pollard. During the high-level opening ceremony tomorrow, the Secretary General is scheduled to deliver remarks that will focus on the future of peacekeeping. He will underscore the importance of the work of our Blue Helmets and the sacrifice they make. He will also touch upon contributions to peacekeeping during these tough times for the financing of our work across the board, as you heard in his remarks here in New York. And just to note that this meeting provides a platform for delegations to announce substantial pledges, we hope, in support of closing capability gaps and adapting peace operations to better respond to existing challenges and new realities that we face. While there, the Secretary General also scheduled to meet, obviously, our host, German officials. He will meet Chancellor of Germany, Friedrich Merz, as well as other leaders and officials attending the global event. He will also have a couple of press opportunities there. Following the ministerial meeting, the Secretary General will be traveling to Iraq to attend the League of Arab States Summit, which is taking place in Baghdad on May 17th. While in Iraq, the Secretary General will be holding meetings with Iraqi officials and leaders from the region attending the summit. He will also discuss a wide range of topics and issues mainly pertaining to the region, as you can easily imagine. We'll keep you updated on his meetings and engagements in both countries. I want to turn now to the situation in Gaza, and I can tell you that the Secretary General is indeed alarmed by the findings released today that 1 in every 5 people in Gaza is facing starvation, while the entire population is facing high levels of acute food insecurity and the risk of famine. That's what the latest snapshot produced by the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification System, which we know as the IPC. The Secretary General is especially alarmed by the vast majority of children in Gaza who are facing extreme food deprivation. This is now confirmed by the 17 agencies and NGOs that participate in producing the IPC's work. To give you some exact figures, 470,000 people in Gaza are facing catastrophic hunger. That's what we refer to as IPC Phase 5, which is the highest level of classification, and the entire population is experiencing acute food insecurity. The report also projects that an alarming 71,000 children and more than 17,000 mothers will need urgent treatment for acute malnutrition. Over 70 days into the blanket ban imposed by Israeli authorities on the entry of any supplies into Gaza, stocks have run out, bakeries have shut down, community kitchens are closing daily, and people are starving. This is not a natural disaster, but a human-made catastrophe that the world should not allow. The way to address this crisis should be clear, and we've been very clear on that front. Open up Gaza so that aid and other essential supplies can reach everyone who needs them, wherever they are. Our teams on the ground have pre-positioned enough supplies, including more than 116,000 metric tons of food assistance, to respond to the people's needs at scale, quickly and efficiently, as we did, as you will recall, during the 42 days of the ceasefire. These stocks are enough to feed 1 million people for up to 4 months, but to accomplish that, we'll need the crossings into Gaza to be opened immediately and for international humanitarian law to be fully respected. Earlier today, the World Food Program and UNICEF warned that hunger and malnutrition have intensified sharply since all aid was blocked from entering on March 2nd, reversing the clear humanitarian gains that we had seen during the ceasefire earlier in the year. WFP's executive director, Cindy McCain, said that families are starving while the food they need is sitting just across the border. She urged the international community to act urgently to get aid flowing into Gaza. If we wait until after famine is confirmed, it will already be too late for too many people, she said. Our colleagues on the ground report that a number of hot meals served by those community kitchens that are still operating is declining very quickly. Today, about 260,000 meals have been prepared and delivered across the Gaza Strip. That's down from more than 840,000 last Wednesday. That's a 70% reduction of 580,000 daily meals in just 5 days. And I also want to remind you that the humanitarian assistance is not limited to food. The humanitarian assistance is also about visiting people in their communities, assessing what they need, identifying those at risk of being left behind, and mobilizing support across sectors that include food, but also water, hygiene, health, nutrition, education, and many others. Meanwhile, healthcare in Gaza is hanging on by a thread, with hospitals facing mass casualty incidents amid severe shortages of supplies, equipment, blood, and staff. The fuel that powers healthcare and water facilities is also being rationed and is running out. I also want to say that the Secretary General welcomes the release of Idan Alexander, an American-Israeli national who'd been held hostage in Gaza since the 7th of October 2023. The Secretary General is profoundly relieved that Mr. Alexander has been freed and is now returning to his family after this harrowing ordeal. The Secretary General renews his urgent call for an immediate, permanent ceasefire and an immediate and unconditional release of all remaining hostages. Hostages must be treated humanely and with dignity. He calls on all parties to immediately ensure the rapid, the unhindered, and the safe humanitarian relief, including the delivery of critical services for all civilians in need. Aid in Gaza and anywhere around the world is not negotiable. The Secretary General commends the sustained efforts of the mediators of Egypt, Qatar, and the United States to bring about an end to these hostilities. He also urges all parties to build on today's release to reach a comprehensive agreement that will ensure the end of the hostilities, the release of the hostages, the provision of humanitarian aid, and the long overdue of the human suffering, long overdue alleviation, of human suffering in Gaza. Moving just north to Lebanon, our peacekeepers in southern Lebanon continue to observe armed activities of the Israeli Defense Forces north of the Blue Line in violation of Resolution 1701. Today, a peacekeeping patrol observed 10 Israeli soldiers crossing north of the Blue Line near the Alma al-Shab, which is in southern Lebanon. Our blue helmets also continue to discover unauthorized weapons and ammunition caches. On Friday, they found a suspected rocket launching site near the village of Kfar Haman and reported it to the Lebanese army. Since the cessation of hostilities understanding reached in November, UN peacekeepers have detected about 240 sites with unauthorized weapons and ammunition and reported it to the Lebanese army as per our rules and the resolution guiding our presence there. Meanwhile, deminers from the UN peacekeeping mission have started work in the vicinity of a UN position along the Blue Line at Ras Nakora to clear the area of unexploded ordnances. The perimeter of the UN position was breached during recent hostilities. UNIFIL currently has about 15 teams dealing with explosive ordnance reconnaissance, clearance, and disposal. In order to mitigate the threats posed by these unexploded ordnances from recent hostilities, UNIFIL peacekeepers have carried out an awareness campaign reaching 330 school children and teachers from 3 public schools. Each session included a presentation of the risks associated with unexploded ordnances, in particular emphasis with the signs and dangers that children must be aware of. Turning to Myanmar, I can tell you the Secretary General is deeply concerned and alarmed by the reports of an airstrike today by the Myanmar military on a school in the Sagang region, which has been impacted by the earthquake. And that airstrike has reportedly killed and injured children. The reported incident occurred despite the Myanmar military announcing the extension of its ceasefire until May 31st to facilitate the relief efforts due to the earthquake. Even in times of armed conflict, schools must be protected and schools must remain areas in which children have a safe place to learn and not be bombed. Reports of an attacks, including in Saigon and other areas impacted by the March 28th earthquake, add further to the already immense suffering of the people in Myanmar, where over 1/3 of the country requires humanitarian aid. The Secretary General condemns all forms of violence and reaffirms the primacy of protection in civilians in accordance with international humanitarian law. In a statement we issued this weekend regarding India-Pakistan, you will have seen that the Secretary General welcomed the ceasefire agreement between India and Pakistan as a positive step towards welcomed the ceasefire agreement between India and Pakistan as a positive step towards ending current hostilities and easing tensions. He hopes the agreement will contribute to lasting peace and foster an environment conducive to addressing the broader, long-standing issues between the two countries. We, of course, stand ready to support efforts aimed at promoting peace and stability in this region. And turning to Sudan, we remain deeply concerned about the impact of ongoing drone attacks on civilian infrastructure across Sudan, including power stations and fuel depot. Earlier today in Port Sudan, which, as you know, is the main entry point for humanitarian supplies and humanitarian personnel trying to enter Sudan, Port Sudan came under drone attacks for the 9th consecutive day. Over the weekend, drone attacks were also reported in areas of Kosti, Kenana, Tendalti, and Rabak in White Nile State, and Ruwaba in North Kordofan State. According to local sources, the strikes hit fuel storage depots that are vital to maintaining critical services and humanitarian operations to support civilians in need. While we and our partners' facilities and premises have not been directly targeted, the repeated drone attacks have severely impacted civilians and the essential services that these people desperately rely on, including access to water and access to power. Damage to civilian infrastructure has sparked panic and displacement. The International Organization for Migration last week reported that 600 people were displaced within Port Sudan alone following the attacks. Meanwhile, flights of the UN Humanitarian Air Service to and from Port Sudan were able to resume on May 8th, helping facilitate the humanitarian response. In North Darfur, the picture is also extremely bleak. our resident and humanitarian coordinator in Sudan, Clementine in Salami, warned yesterday that the situation in Abu Shuk and Zamzam camps is catastrophic as civilians remain trapped. Both sites remain effectively cut off from external assistance. And as you know, these are places where famine has been declared. Ms. Salami urgently calls for a ceasefire and humanitarian pauses to enable delivery of life-saving assistance. Hundreds of thousands of people have fled attacks on Zamzam camp last month. We and our partners will continue to scale up the response with the means that we have as more displaced people are arriving. Last week, WFP and its partners distributed food packages to more than 335,000 people in Tawila. Of those, 67,000 people also received emergency nutrition supply to address the malnutrition they were suffering from. Quick note from the DRC, where the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tells us that severe flooding in South Kivu province further strains an already dire humanitarian situation in the region. The local authorities warn that continued heavy rainfall threatens further damage, and they've issued an urgent appeal for humanitarian assistance. OCHA today convened an emergency meeting in Uvira to coordinate the response with its partners and the government. Floods are also worsening existing vulnerabilities in Fitsi territory, where ongoing clashes and a recent surge in cholera cases heighten the risk of major public health crisis. In Ituri province, assessments by our humanitarian partners indicate that more than 40,000 people have arrived in the Fataki and Retri areas of Jugu territory between February and April. Those arriving there were mostly fleeing violence in other areas or returning home from previous displacements during a period of calm. The crisis, as you can imagine, is overwhelming and already strained services in the area. Impacted about 155,000 human beings. Our humanitarian partners report acute needs across all sectors. This includes shelter, food, and health care. We continue to mobilize assistance, but are facing major challenges to deliver life-saving assistance due to the continued access issues and to the funding gaps. Also, I was asked earlier today, and I can tell you that the Secretary General welcomes the news of the decision of the Kurdistan Workers' Party, known as the PKK, to dissolve and disarm. This decision, if implemented, represents another important step towards the peaceful resolution of a long-standing conflict. And moving to Europe and Ukraine, our humanitarian colleagues on the ground tell us that airstrikes continued across Ukraine over the weekend, killing 8 and injuring 44 civilians. Nearly 900 people were evacuated from the Sumy and Donetsk region. All of this is from what local authorities are telling us. Civilian infrastructure, including homes, gas pipelines, and power lines, were also damaged in the regions of Dnipro, Donetsk, Kharkiv, Odessa, Sumy, and Zaporizhzhia. Meanwhile, OCHA reports that in March and April, humanitarian operations in Ukraine continued to be constrained by active hostilities. During this period, 37 incidents impacting the work of the humanitarian personnel were reported. Airstrikes on densely populated urban areas with humanitarian presence resulted in 13 incidents involving casualties among aid workers. 2 aid workers were killed in the line of duty, while 16 were injured. Finally, in Kherson city had the highest number of incidents with casualties among humanitarian staff. Despite all of these challenges, our humanitarian partners are continuing to deliver critical assistance in frontline regions. By March of this year, 2.3 million people had received essential aid. This includes supporting millions of people with clean water and sanitation services, as well as with food and agricultural aid, and supporting people with improved access to health care. And back on this continent in Haiti, our humanitarian colleagues say that after days of heavy rainfall in the northeast department of Haiti, widespread flooding was triggered, which damaged homes, crops, and vital infrastructure. Since May 5th, more than 4,300 families have been impacted across the towns of Ouanaminthe and Ferrier, where more than 3,900 homes were inundated. In some areas, floodwater reached entire neighborhoods, destroying household belongings and leaving many without shelter. Initial assessments indicate severe impacts on livelihoods, including loss of livestock, and destruction of small-scale farms. Key roads were also damaged, hindering access to affected communities. While no fatalities have been reported, local authorities warn that river levels remain high and weather conditions remain unstable. We are supporting, OCHA is supporting local authorities and partners to coordinate the response, but we need additional support to scale up life-saving assistance and strengthen preparedness, particularly as the rainy and hurricane season is fast approaching. I just want to flag a couple of more things. One, the Secretary General appointed today an independent high-level expert group to develop recommendations for measuring that complement or go beyond gross domestic product. The appointment of the expert group follows a request by member states in the Pact of the Future. The effort to develop measures beyond GDP by 2030 is also an explicit objective of the Sustainable Development Goals. This is a way to recognize that GDP, which relies upon a gauge of prosperity, provides an incomplete picture of the different dimensions of sustainable development. The expert group will closely consult with member states and key stakeholders throughout the process. Their work begins tomorrow with a closed briefing for member states led by our Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed and our Undersecretary General for Policy, Guy Ryder. Also, our disarmament colleagues have begun informal consultations on lethal autonomous weapons system this morning. It's a closed meeting, but they heard in a pre-taped video message from the Secretary General. In that message, he reiterated his call for a legally binding instrument on lethal autonomous weapons systems by next year, saying that machines that have the power and discretion to take human lives without human control are politically unacceptable, morally repugnant, and should be banned by international law. He told participants that their work, including within the context of the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons, is moving us in the right direction. He also reminded them that there is widespread agreement on the fundamental principles. First, human control over the use of force is essential, and second, time is running out to take preventive action. On an issue of such concern to all humanity, every voice must be heard, Mr. Guterres said, and he thanked the participants for helping us draw closer to a world in which lethal autonomous weapons systems have no place. 2 international days. First, this week we celebrate Vesak, and in his message to mark the day, the Secretary General sends his warmest wishes to Buddhists worldwide as they commemorate the birth, enlightenment, and the passing of the Buddha. It's also International Day of Plant Health. Plant Health. And the beginning of the 8th Global Road Safety Week, 2 separate things. In a world where only 0.2% of roads are equipped with bike lanes, very important, and many communities do not have basic things such as sidewalks or safe pedestrian crossings. The theme this year is one we can all relate to: make walking and cycling safe. We have a payment today. We got lots of money today from one country. What is the largest species of lizards in the world? Komodo dragons. And where does one find the Komodo dragon? Who said Indonesia? All right, you see? Thank God for the cameramen. All right. All right, Edie, welcome back.
Thank you, Steph. A couple of follow-ups on Gaza. First, in light of the latest report from the famine watching group IPC, what steps is the United Nations taking to basically demand that Israel lift its blockade? And could you also address whether negotiations on some kind of a new delivery process for aid into Gaza is still being discussed, or has that ended?
A couple of things to unpack. In all our meetings with Israeli officials, we continue to push for the reopening of the gates into Gaza. They have the keys to the lock. Those gates need to be unlocked. But this is a message that we expect and that we know that member states, a number of member states, have also passed on. It is not just on the shoulders of the Secretary General to state the obvious, that humanitarian aid needs to flow back into Gaza, and it needs to flow back freely. There's been lots of, on your second question, there's been lots of reporting of various new mechanisms. We've read some of the latest reporting last week and over the weekend. Obviously, we had discussions with the Israelis on this earlier in the past weeks. For us, it's clear the system that existed there before worked, right? Humanitarian aid was getting in, people were being fed, patients in hospitals were being treated. We will only work in an environment where we can work freely based on our principles of impartiality, of neutrality, and of humanity. And I will leave it at that. Michelle.
Thanks, Steph. Bit of a follow-up to that. Since the Secretary General spoke to us on April 8th, I think it was, and essentially rejected the plan that had been verbally proposed to the UN then. Yeah. And as you've noted, there's been some more reporting on various different plans, a Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, something that appears to be US-backed, something that Israel might... What exactly has been presented to the UN in terms, and from whom?
I mean, as far as I know, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation plan that I saw reported in the media was not officially presented to the UN. Mr. Fletcher, our emergency relief coordinator, will be briefing the council tomorrow on the situation in Gaza. He will expand more on what I've said, but our principles are principles, and we will not bend them.
So what exactly has Israel then presented to the UN?
I mean, we were briefed a few weeks ago, right, on various plans which were not acceptable to the way we work.
So the last time you were briefed by Israel was when?
I have to give you the exact date. I mean, there are ongoing meetings between the UN and Israel on the ground in Jerusalem. But the situation really, I mean, on one hand, our position has not changed. On the other hand, we've seen all sorts of different ideas being floated around. And I guess on a third hand, the situation on the ground is just getting catastrophic. I mean, you can all read the report. I think I've laid out things that are difficult even just to announce, and I think difficult for people to write, and obviously horrific for the people on the ground.
So the plan from Israel has been evolving since the start of
April. I mean, you need to speak to the Israelis about their plan. I can only speak to our side.
Okay, I have a question on another topic.
I'll come back to you later. There's a musical interlude, so it's fine. Pam.
Thanks, Steph. On follow-up on this and then a question. There's been reports that David Beasley, the former WFP executive director, would be leading this GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Fund. Would that be a positive thing? Because even though he's not with the UN, he obviously knows.
Look, it's not a matter of people. It's a matter of principles. Your second question.
Okay, second question is on IOM. Speaking of principles, the Migration Agency of the UN, IOM, has confirmed that they are working with the Trump administration at the request of the Trump administration for AVRs, the voluntary returns. There have been reports that that the Trump administration will be paying the UN for this. Is there any kind of agreement on a separate...
I think that's a question to ask IOM.
Okay. Thank you. And finally, sorry, is there any road safety thing going on in New York? It used to be Jean Todt.
Yeah, Jean Todt remains our road safety envoy. I'm not aware of any event in New York.
Thank you.
Benno, and then we'll go back this way.
Thank you. Just a technical question. Can you give me more details to the meeting of the SG with Friedrich Merz, the German Chancellor? When will it be and where will it be?
It will be in Berlin. I'm trying to picture the schedule that I read in my head.
Okay, you can also text me later. It's not
I'll
that
text.
urgent.
How about we'll text later, Benno. But it will be. My understanding, it will be at the Federal Chancery. Gabriel, then Deji.
Thanks, Steph. I just have a question about UN80. I listened to the SG's remarks this morning or this afternoon, and I'm just trying to get a sense of a timeline on when some more announcements can be made. Are we expecting that Guy Ryder or Catherine Pollard will be presenting an overall plan at some point, or is it going to be more piecemeal?
It's not so much piecemeal. It's like different streams. It's different. There's some things that are under the direct authority of the Secretary General. There are things that are the authority of the member states. There are things that have to be dealt with the specialized agencies over which the Secretary General has no control. So things will happen in phases. I think what is under the Secretary General's purview will be presented, I think, to member states, as he said it, for the revised budget in September or before. And I think when maybe later this week or next week, we'll try to have Catherine and Guy maybe come down and talk to you guys.
He mentioned in his remarks that a lease on one building, an UN building in New York, has been not renewed, and there are 2 more UN buildings in New York that their leases will not be renewed when they come up. Do you know what they are by any chance?
I'll double check. I
Okay.
kind of know where they are, but I have to make sure everything's public so as not to panic
thanks.
the real estate market. Deji.
Yes. First, after the meeting in Geneva, China and U.S. decided to announce that they are going to lower the tariffs together. What's the reaction from the Secretary General on this latest development?
Look, we welcome the direct dialogue on trade that we saw between the People's Republic of China and the United States over the weekend in Switzerland. It's very positive for the world economy, and we've always said that we don't need any escalation in the trade war. We need dialogue. I think the Secretary General has been very clear that no one wins in a trade war. And as you know, I think the theme of the idea of decoupling, right, is one that has troubled him and that he has raised on a number of issues. So it's obviously a good start.
Okay. Second, also a follow-up on the UN80. In Secretary General's speech, he mentioned about relocation of some of the staff members here in the UN. Is that only for UN agencies, or maybe some departments of the Secretariat also will be relocated to somewhere else
I think he
rather than New
was
York?
referring to things across the board.
So it's possible for even Secretariat.
What he was talking is that it's really based on functions, which could be done from an existing lower cost duty station. But obviously these are all things that are going to be explored in detail. And done, I must add, when it comes to staff, done in full accordance with the rules and regulation for staff. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Ray. I'm with 21st Century Business Herald, Guangdong, China. So I also have a follow-up question about the trade talk. Following the recent high-level economic and trade talk between China and United States in Geneva, where both sides emphasize the importance of mutual benefits and also cooperation. So does UN think this could lead to greater stability in global trade, and this could reduce global market volatility?
Look, positive and mutually beneficial relations between the world's 2 largest economy is good for everyone, right? Tension between the world's 2 largest economy is not good for the global economy. So that's why I said we welcome these talks.
Yeah.
Sinan and Stephane. Oh, so did you have another question? Or?
Yeah, I have a
Oh, sorry.
follow-up.
I apologize.
It's okay. So, what role can UN play in facilitating this
Well,
kind of
obviously,
international
there
dialogue?
are existing infrastructures, notably the World Trade Organization, the UN Trade and Development agencies that are all standing by and already exist to facilitate global trade.
Yeah, but United States President Donald Trump tends to exit one of the WTO. So, how can UN deal with this kind of situation?
It is not for me to predict the future. I'm just telling you what the tools available are.
That was me.
Yes, Sinan, go ahead. And then Stefano, then Georgia, and then we'll go back to, okay.
Thank
Go
you,
ahead.
Steph. Yeah, you mentioned that Secretary General welcomes the news of decision of the Kurdistan Workers' Party. And the question is, how can the UN participate in monitoring and implementing any potential disarmament agreements?
I saw reports, I think in one Turkish newspaper, that weapons will be handed over under the auspices of the UN. That is, as far as I know, we've checked, notably with our colleagues at the UN mission in Iraq, and that is not the case. But obviously, I mean, that's the information that I have today. But as always, the UN stands ready to help and facilitate any movement towards peace.
Quick follow-up. Do you think Secretary General suggest any international committee to observe or monitor the peace process?
What I think is important is that everyone who signed on to this agreement agrees to the process, right? We want to be helpful. We don't need to impose ourselves if it's not helpful. I think the announcement came today. We've welcomed it. Let's see how we and the international community can help the process along.
Last one. Has Secretary General been in touch with any Turkish or Kurdish parties about this?
Not as if as of this morning. Not as if as. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but okay. So sorry. Quick follow-up. He has been planning such a thing, or?
Right now, his focus. His focus this morning was on his UN80 speech. As soon as I have something else to share with you, I will. Stefano, then Georgia.
Thank you, Stephane. After the shocking death of 2 children and an adult from hunger and thirst on a boat in the Mediterranean, a tragedy that the ONG Mediterranean Saving Humans described not as an accident, but as a predictable outcome of European policies. Does the Secretary General believe the European Union is failing its obligation under international law to protect lives at sea?
The world is failing all of these human beings who are trying to seek a better life. They're failing by not ensuring that their lives at home are good enough for them to stay. They're failing by leaving the migration and refugee routes in the hands of smugglers and criminal elements instead of managing them. The list of people who are failing migrants is long and it is wide. Georgia.
Thank you, Stephane. As we have been informed, the contract, Mrs. Holguin contract starts today.
It does.
Yeah. So, do you know when is he planning to visit Cyprus, or could you provide the time frame or something on her visit?
She did start today. We've asked as soon as we have some indication as to when she will go, we will share that with you. But I don't have a time frame to share with you, unfortunately. Yes, sir.
As the UN is facing this financial crisis, are they looking into closing missions, like one in Kosovo, UNMIK, for example, and allocate those funds to where is needed?
The missions, as you know, are created by the Security Council. Any political or peacekeeping mission is created by the Security Council. It is up to them to decide on the future. What the Secretary General talked about is efficiencies in the way we run our current political and peacekeeping missions. Let's go to the screen, then I'll come back for round two. Abdelhamid.
Thank you, Stephane. After the report you mentioned in your briefing, which was issued by UNICEF and WFP about the malnutrition and IPC level reaching 5. So would the SG just wait until 2.1 million Palestinians to be completely annihilated to call it genocide? Why he doesn't speak up now when the genocide is going on against a whole entire population?
Abdelhamid, I think you have been listening as much as I have. The Secretary General has been speaking out and speaking out and speaking out on the situation in Gaza. We've had our colleagues on the ground living side by side with the Palestinians who are suffering. They have spoken out. But it's not just a matter of speaking. They have also been on the ground working, trying to feed people, trying to keep people alive in the most dire conditions. The issue of genocide, as you know, and as we've said repeatedly, whether it's regarding Gaza or any other place on earth, is a legal issue for us that can only be determined by a competent court. That doesn't mean that the Secretary General has not been extremely vocal on the situation in Gaza. Benno.
Thank you. As you know, there's the possibility of a meeting between Ukraine and Russia in Istanbul on Thursday. Are you working on being present in Istanbul?
We're still trying to get some more details of what may happen, but I can tell you that we're of course encouraged by the recent initiatives that are pushing for a 30-day ceasefire in Ukraine and the potential direct talks between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. And again, our goal remain a full and immediate unconditional ceasefire in Ukraine, which would be for us a critical first step towards ending this war and creating the conditions for just a sustainable, comprehensive peace in line with the Charter, in line with international law, and in line with relevant UN resolutions. We, of course, as I said, are trying to get more details at this point and stand ready to support any and all meaningful initiatives to that end.
So President Zelensky said he is open to meeting in person on Thursday, and the SG is already in Europe. Can you see him traveling over to Istanbul?
I think I can see the Secretary General doing lots of things. Let's see what happens. Michelle.
Thank you, Steph.
Reuters.
Apologies if this was us last week while I was.
Oh, that's right. I wasn't here last week.
Oh, you weren't?
Yeah,
okay. Well, it's new to both of us. The U.S. Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff was briefing at US-UN. Did he talk to any UN officials?
I'm not aware that he had any conversation with the UN official.
Okay, and then just on a separate topic, there was some reports last week of Rohingya deportations by India. Do you have anything on that? Do you know anything about that?
I will check on that for you. Gabriel. I don't say that with a sigh. Gabriel, please.
Thanks, Steph. I just want to go back to UN80 and the Secretary General's remarks this morning, because I was struck with, he really seems like he's moving fast, and he's really going to change this, he's wanting to change this organization from top to bottom. Is it an overstatement to say that the UN, when this process is complete, will be a completely changed organization as a whole?
I think one thing that will not be changed and one thing that will be exactly the same are the principles under which we operate and the goals of what we do, right? What we hope will change is the way we do it, the efficiencies, to be able to better serve the people that we're here to serve. But I would also, I think when you talk about the Secretary General, his view and not the word view is not the right one, but when in his strong, deeply held desire to reform this organization. I think it's worth going back to the remarks he made in 2017 at a side event on management during his first General Assembly, and you can see that his goals have always been the same, but to really impact this change, it is a partnership with member states. It will also be done, obviously, in consultation with staff, with the staff unions. But this organization can be better, but working under the guiding principles that are embedded in the Charter and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which are unchangeable.
Does he have any reaction to some criticism that I've heard from staff members that say he's just simply moving too fast, he's breaking too much, too quickly?
Look, as a staff member, I think I fully understand and grasp the anxiety that remarks like this provoke. The Secretary General will be writing to the staff this afternoon, and there will be all sorts of engagement from managers throughout the system to allow staff to express themselves, to raise questions, and obviously there will also be discussions with the staff unions. Okay. Yes. Housekeeping. I'm not very good at that.
Housekeeping question. When's the escalator going to be fixed?
On that note, yes. Yes,
and another housekeeping question.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Why are they curtailing the hours in the delegates' lounge, which is one place that makes money for the UN?
I don't know if it makes money for the UN. I don't know even if it makes money for the contractor that we have. But I think people will just have to drink more in a shorter amount of time. You try, yeah.
You butchered the name a little bit of